Okay, let's first make sense of this division algorithm. So the division algorithm states that given any whole numbers a and b, with b non-zero, there exists unique whole numbers q and r such that a equals bq plus r, when r is greater than or equal to 0 but less than b. So let's just do some division problems and we'll make sense of what that statement is saying. So if we do 15 divided by 3, we can fit it in 5 times, and then the remainder is 0, right? So the division algorithm, all it states is that 15 is equal to whatever we were dividing by times however many times it fit in plus the remainder, which is true, right? So another example, if we do 17 divided by 3, it's still going to fit in 5 times, but now we have a remainder of 2. So if we're using the division algorithm, it's stating that 17 is equal to 3 times 5 or 5 times 3 plus 2, which is true, right? So it's saying given any two whole numbers, there exists two whole numbers, right? So for this case, given any two whole numbers that you're dividing, there exist two whole numbers such that this entire relationship holds. Okay, so let's think of this in terms of the restriction. So note that the remainder will never be greater than what you're dividing by, because if it was greater, then you would be able to increase the amount that it fit in, right? So if I had a remainder of 3, that wouldn't make any sense because I can fit in another set of 3. Okay, so that's where the restriction comes, that the remainder is going to be less than what you're dividing by, which is b, but it can be 0. So let's do an example. So the example problem is that if 123 is divided by some number, and we'll just stick with b, then the remainder is 13. And we want to know what are the possible divisors. So just plugging everything in, 123, so by the division algorithm, is equal to, I don't know how many times it fits in, right? Q times B, and then the remainder is 13. Just keep in mind that the remainder has to be smaller than B. Or in other words, B needs to be larger than the remainder. So let's just subtract 13 so that we're working with QB. So we get 110 is equal to QB. And we're trying to find out what are some of the possible B's. So one restriction that we have is that B has to be greater than 13. Right? It can't be smaller because this is the remainder after the division. And then secondly, we have this, that when you multiply two whole numbers, I need to get 110. So some of the possible ones that you can multiply to get 110 is 1 and 110, 2 and 55, 5 and 22, 10 times 11. Right? So once we find this, now we got to find out what are the possible B's, or the divisors. But because of this condition, the only ones that are possible are things that are greater than 13. So the possible divisors are 110, 55, and 22 to have a remainder of 13. And you can check that, right? So if you do 123 divided by 110, or 123 divided by 55, or 123 divided by 22, all of these cases will have a remainder of 13. And I'll leave it up to you guys to check that out. Okay, but these were the two conditions that needed to be satisfied, so the only ones possible are 1, 10, 55, and 22.